everyone, how's it going? I'm your host, Isaiah Gira, and this is Homework Hotline, the show with all the helping hands on all your homework needs. We here at HMG have teamed up with some special tutors to bring you the show and to help you with your homework. Each show we go over certain lessons, and you guys can join live at our Twitch at HMG_Twitch, and feel free to ask questions and leave your support. Just tune into the show in general. It's a good time. But anywho, let's get into our lessons for this week. We have, returning from our previous show, Leticia, Vincent, and Erica. Thank you all for coming back. Also joined by Sarah. Thank you for joining us again, Sarah. She was a previous tutor for season 1. Always glad to see more joining faces. But before we get started with our lessons for today, one very quick shout out to our behind the scenes friends of Homework Hotline, Nick, Jose, Ethan, and Miss McLean. You guys make the show what it is and uphold its quality. You guys are great. Thank you so much for attributing to this show. Now, let's get started. Vincent, you are going to start us off. So, what do you think you have on today's lesson plan?
So today I have a quick Algebra 2 lesson on simplifying rational expressions.
Okay, awesome. Now, you and I sat next to each other during our ACTs. I hope that we both got relatively high grades, but let's hope that you can teach just a bit more and I can learn just a bit more for future tests, and hopefully I can do better in the future. God knows I need help with some math. Go right ahead, Vincent.
All right. So to start off, I want to do a quick example problem. You'll have some quadratics, stuff in the numerator, stuff in the denominator. And the main focus you want to do is try to simplify everything as much as you can. So that way you can start canceling things out and actually answering the question. So to start, we can start with our numerator, and we have to take out a GCF here. And the GCF in our numerator can be 4x. And that'll leave us with x minus 1. And now we can work on our denominator. There's also a GCF we can take out. It's very important to take out GCFs. It'll make your life a lot easier. So we can see that there's a 2 we can take out. That'll give us an x squared plus 2x minus 3. And now we can still simplify the denominator a little bit more because there's a quadratic in there. So it's pretty simple, but I always like crossing box. Super easy to visualize. So we have -3 in the top, 2 in the bottom. Two numbers that multiply -3 add to 2. That'll be 3, -1. And now we can set up our simplified rational expression. Remember, always keep the 2 outside the factors. Since the coefficient of a is 1, we can use the shortcut. So our two factors here are 3 and -1, x plus 3 and x minus 1. And now what we do from here, we just cross out, where we cancel out as many things as we possibly can that are the same in the numerator and the denominator. For example, the x minus 1 in the numerator and the denominator we can cross out because anything divided by itself is 1, so it won't change the expression. And then we also have a 2 in the denominator and a 4 in the numerator. The 4 in the numerator becomes a 2, and the 2 in the denominator becomes 1. And so we're left with 2x over x plus 3. And we can't simplify anything else because we can't cross out the two x's because this x plus 3 is technically in parentheses, so it's connected, and we can't simplify anything that's in parentheses like that. So that's the final answer for this question. Pretty basic. I have one more to go over. This one's a little bit more complicated. Not too bad though. So for this one, there's going to be division, and we're going to have to use keep, change, flip. All right. So the first thing we want to do here is just start from left to right. Start with the numerator, 25n plus 5. We can break that into a GCF of 5. Take the 5 out, and then we're left with 5n plus 1. Now we can work on the denominator. 10n to the third power plus 2n squared. There's also a GCF we can take out here of 2n squared. And we're left with 5n plus 1. Now the division and the other fraction, this is where we do the keep, change, flip. So we keep this fraction, we change the sign, and we flip the other fraction. So the division becomes multiplication, and the n squared minus 16 is now on top, and the 5 is on the bottom. And we can still simplify this right fraction a little bit more. We can turn this, the n squared minus 16, that is a difference of squares, because the n squared is a perfect square, the 16 is a perfect square, and it's separated by a subtraction sign. So we can turn this into n plus 4 and n minus 4. And from here we have everything simplified as much as we possibly can. So we're going to go ahead and start crossing things out right away. Notice this 5n plus 1 is the same on both the top and the bottom. And there's also 2 5s. Each of them will become a 1, so it won't change anything. And we're left with, on the top, n plus 4 times n minus 4. And in the denominator, 2n squared. That's as much as we can simplify this expression. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have. If you guys have any questions, you can throw them in the chat. But other than that, let's go back to Isaiah.
Thank you, Vincent. It's always great to have you teaching our viewers on this show. Now we're going to keep this math train chugging along, going from Algebra 2 over to Sarah with Pre-Calc. Sarah, welcome back to the show. It's nice to have you.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right.
But yeah, so I'll just jump right into it, I guess.
Go right ahead.
So on the Jamboard, we have this first question here, 71 degrees with 18 minutes subtracted by 47 degrees of 29 minutes. So basically, I really like that because we count the 1 dash as a minute and then 2 dashes would be seconds. So this would basically look like 71 and 18. And then you're just gonna do like a basic subtraction problem. This one's pretty simple, but there's like a little twist in it. So with normal subtraction, you don't have to worry about this part over here, like this, like 8 over 9. You would just take 1 away from it, like make it 18. But for this, we can't do that because there's a 1 here, and that would still have the problem of not being big enough. So we're gonna take 60 from the 71. So this will become a 70. And then we just add 60 over here because each degree is technically 60 minutes. So this over here would become 78 because we're adding 60. And then you would just go through as you normally would. So this would be an 18 minus 9, 9, and then subtract that from over here. So that would be a 6, and that would be 4. And then just basic subtraction again, 10 minus 7, 3, and then 6 minus 4, 2. So your answer would then look like 23 degrees and then 49 minutes. So that's how you would write this one. This was actually on our homework assignment we had. So that's how that one would look. And then on this next one, convert the angle measure to decimal degrees, round to the nearest thousandth of degree. It's kind of the same thing, but instead you're just going to be multiplying. So you want to turn this into a decimal. You're going to keep the 91 as is. You're not going to do anything to it. That's going to be your first part of the number. And then the 35 minutes, you're going to divide that by 60. And that's going to give you, we're rounding to the nearest thousandth, so it's going to give you 0.583 if you rounded properly. If not, it would just be like a decimal that just goes on forever. So you definitely want to keep in mind that it's to the thousandth. And then for the last part, 54, you're going to divide that by 3,600. I know that sounds like a really big number, but it's because instead of dividing by seconds, instead of dividing by minutes, you're dividing by seconds, so it's kind of a lot smaller. And then again to the thousandth, so this would be 0.015. And you would just add these numbers together to get your final part of the answer. And that would just give you 0.598 because thousandth is where it should be. So this is the final answer for this one. Okay, so moving on to our next one. This one's really straightforward. It's kind of like you're just finding another angle that's the exact same, but you want it in a range now. So your range is from 0 to 360. So this is not in between that range, so you have to do something to it. And we're not going to subtract because that's still going to be less. That's going to be way less than 360. So we're going to add 360. Oh wait, way less than 0, I should say. And once you add 360 to this, it's going to give you negative 2. Oh wait, I'm just kidding. Negative 120. And again, still not in 360. So you're gonna add another one to it. So it's gonna be plus 360 again. And that will leave you with, I have 240 here. I think we're gonna go with that, yeah. So we have 240 as our final total. And that is within 0 and 360, so it works. But if it's just asking like what's a negative and what's a positive version of this, then you would just add 360 to it and then subtract 360 to it, because that's another question really similar to this one. If it doesn't have a range like 0 to 360, then all you're going to be doing is taking this number and adding and subtracting 360 from it. And then our last one here is basically you just have to remember the all students take calculus type of thing. So we have our little, remember this is the y-axis and then this is the x-axis. So our like mnemonic, I guess, to remember this would just be A for all, and then S for students, T for take, and then C for calculus. And this is our first quadrant, our second quadrant, our third quadrant, and our fourth quadrant. And this question is asking to decide whether this ratio here, y over r, is positive or negative. So, but it's in quadrant 2. So you kind of want to like make sure you understand that it's quadrant 2. So we're going to be looking at this area specifically. And then is it positive or negative? So y over r, off the top of your head, you should know that this is going to be equal to sine, because we went over that a few classes ago. I think it was last week. And we were supposed to have these memorized, but sine is basically just so, right? SOHCAHTOA. So O over H. So that's just O over H is just the same thing as saying y over r. And we're looking at this in quadrant 2. So because this says students for S, we know that sine and cosine are both going to be positive, because those are the only things positive in this quadrant, versus the first quadrant has everything positive, the third quadrant has only tangent and cotangent positive, and then the fourth quadrant only has secant and cosine positive. So because it's in the second quadrant and we know it's students, we know that sine is positive, which means that this point where it's asking is going to be positive. So we would just write positive for this answer. Abbreviate that. And that's basically all I have for you guys. And again, if you do have any questions, just drop them in the chat and we'll answer those for you.
Cool. Thank you, Sarah, for that awesome lesson. It's always great to have you, math whizzes, on our panel here. We always love to have you guys teach us. And we're going to actually jump to a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be focusing on more language-oriented lessons with Erica and Leticia. You guys stay tuned for that. But real quick, just a quick announcement on behalf of our Homework Hotline crew. We passed 200 subscribers on Twitch. So thank you so much for that. All you people in the chats who are viewing and coming every week to tune into our shows, thank you so much for subscribing and being dedicated viewers of Homework Hotline. Now we're going to jump to a break and we'll see you guys after that. Thank you so much. See you in a bit. Hello everyone, welcome back to Homework Hotline, the show with the helping hands on all your homework needs. Before the break, we had Vincent and Sarah teaching us math, algebra 2, and pre-calculus. Now we're moving on to Erica and Leticia. Erica is going to start with Spanish, but real quick, a quick shout out to our Northwest Esports team. You guys in the chat might notice some Twitch emotes, some custom emotes that may or may not have my face on them. You have the Northwest Esports team to thank for that. They just held a Super Smash Brothers tournament not too long ago, and real props to them. They teamed up with Silver States Esports, and it's great to see them doing so well with their club. Now, Erica, how's it going?
It's going good, Isaiah.
Awesome, awesome. You ready to teach us some Spanish?
Always.
All right. Well, I got no Spanish words for you right now. I'm sure I'll come up with something, another bit. All right, you go ahead.
All right, so we're picking up back where we left off. I think it's 2 weeks ago. We started talking about yo stem changers, which is as in present tense, I, speaking as if you are doing something, you yourself. We went over yo-go stem changers, and we also went over OY stem changers. And this time we're going to be going over ZCO stem changers and a couple special cases that don't really fit into any certain category, but you just kind of, once again, with any language, you just gotta memorize it because that's how it is. So we're gonna start with ZCO. These are kind of nice because they have somewhat of a pattern to them. As you'll notice with all of these verbs that we have, they all start with before they're IR, ER, or AR. These are all IR and ER though. They have a C. So like conducir or conocer, they have that ser or sir. So that's kind of how you're gonna recognize these. And once again, we changed these for the simple reason is that it sounds better. It rolls off the tongue better. It's like with any language. With English, we say we baked something, or we cried, or we laughed, but for some reason we say we ran. Why do we do that? It just sounds better. And that's the same thing as applies to Spanish. So with conducir, which means to drive, it changes to conduzco. And if we didn't change it, it would sound like conduso, and that doesn't, it sounds kind of weird. It sounds weird. Conduso, sounds better. And then conocer, which means to know, but not like saber, which saber we have over here. Saber is to know more as in facts and knowledge. Conocer is actually like to know a person. You know personal things about that person. You've met them. So conozco. Traducir, which means to translate. Haha, funny. We're doing it right now. So that's good to know. Traduzco. Ofrecer, which means to offer. Ofrosco. Right? No, ofrosco. My bad. Merecer, which means to deserve. You deserve something. Or so if you were to say this, you'd be saying, I deserve whatever you're talking about. Maybe you're saying, I deserve love. Merezco amor. Sorry, I messed that up. So yeah, there's quite a few of these verbs. I didn't list all of them because I would be here for a long time if I did. But just recognize the CER, CIR, and that's how you know to change them. So moving on to ver. Ver is to see or to watch something. We changed this to veo. If we didn't, it would just be vo, which it's kind of weird. Saber, like I said, this is to know facts or knowledge, not to personally know something about someone. And we say se. So not sabo, se. Now you could use sabo. People would know what you're saying. They would know you're saying I know. It's just that's not what you say. Like there's no real reason for it. You don't want to be made fun as one of the kids who say yo sabo or no sabo. You want to say no sé or yo sé. Just some advice, and also it's easier to say, so just say se. That's all I have today for yo stem changers. That kind of wraps up my lesson on that lesson over yo. I'll go over some more stem changers in the future depending on other tenses of verbs. So if you have any questions, just leave them in the chat and I'll be happy to answer them.
Muchas gracias, señorita Fish. Muchas gracias, muy bien indeed.
Gracias.
I see you all laughing. I don't know what's so funny. We're going to be moving on, though. We're moving on to Leticia she's going to be teaching us English. Leticia, what sort of English are we dealing with here for your lesson?
Today we're going to be looking on rhetorical devices.
Awesome. So you go ahead and get started whenever you are ready.
Hi guys. So rhetorical devices have their place in stories everywhere. They're found in movies, in literature, in books, and they're going to be coming up on our AP exams in May, so it's really good to study them. So usually when we think of rhetorical devices, we most commonly associate them with similes or metaphors or alliteration, the more common ones. But we also need to take care of the least common ones because they do show up on the test. I find that it's really easy to memorize these by just looking at a bunch of different examples of it, which is what we're going to be doing today. So to begin, we have an isocolon. And an isocolon is formed by using parallel elements in similar or same lengths. Right here, we have a Latin phrase known as veni, vidi, vici, which directly translates to I came, I saw, and I conquered. So you can definitely see the parallel elements in this phrase. I did something, I did something, I did something. It's very similar. And the Latin phrase, each word has the exact same, not the exact same 4 letters, but very similar letters, and they're all 4. So you do see how similar they are, every single clause used. A good way that I use to remember what an isocolon is by thinking of an isosceles triangle, because an isosceles triangle has 2 equal lengths, the same way that an isocolon would have equal lengths in letters used. If you want to go a bit deeper, iso itself means similar or same, so it's a good way to remember that. Moving on, we have a zeugma. So a zeugma is used when there's a word that is used for 2 or more parts of a sentence. So an example of this would be, you're free to execute your laws and your citizens as you see fit. So the word that's being used twice here is execute, because you're executing your laws, whether it be by enforcing new rules, and you're also executing your citizens by killing them. So it's kind of like wordplay. It's more so a pen. And the last one we have today is a polysyndeton. So this is the use of many conjunctions between clauses. And I have found out today that there's a really easy way to remember this, and it's just by looking at the direct translation of the word. So the prefix poly actually means many. So we know that there's many in the definition. And syndeton actually also means conjunction. So just by knowing what the word means, you have the definition set. So an example of a polysyndeton is I laughed and played and talked and fun. Right here we have I laughed, conjunction, played, conjunction, talked, conjunction. So you do really see how it's used. So that's all of the rhetorical devices I have. So we all know that rhetorical devices are meant to do something. They're meant to either enforce a point or make a point themselves. Their usage varies. An isocolon could be used to emphasize something. The Latin phrase that we discussed earlier was actually once said by Julius Caesar, a leader from a very long time ago. It was a very bold statement. It's meant to emphasize. A zeugma is used for irony or comedic reasons. It's really ironic that you can execute a law and also your citizens. And lastly, we have a polysyndeton, which can be used to show rhythm or to show relationships. So maybe because you played and because you talked and because you laughed, you also flunked class. So it's really done to show the relationship between everything. And yeah, that's all I have for you today. And thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat so I can address them.
Thank you, Leticia. Thank you for closing our show out with your rhetorical devices lesson. Thank you, every one of you tutors, for coming and teaching everyone in the chat, and me included. Now, before we wrap up our show, some final shout outs to a very special someone in the chat. We have Kayleen Monteagudo from Raving for Retail. She seems to be showing her support for you, Leticia, in general. Thank you, Kayleen, for watching and tuning into Homework Hotline. And be sure to tune into her show, Raving for Retail. It's a great show. It talks about fashion. Great show in general. Also, one other shout out to A Little Bit of Light Live. It goes on air every Tuesday after school. It's a show about mental health, it discusses serious topics, and it's also very informative. So be sure to tune into that. It's a very good show led by some very good people. Now, thank you everyone for coming to the show today. And remember, if you guys need help with any of your homework, be sure to call the Homework Hotline. Thank you everyone for coming. We'll see you next time.